Hello, everyone. I'm here at the UAP Medical Coalition. We have a special guest today who's going to introduce herself and explain briefly why she's here. In other words, what is your background related to UAPs?
Hi, well, thanks for having me. And my name is Alex Dietrich. I am a retired Navy pilot, and I had an encounter with something strange, unidentified in November of 2004. And I have received a lot of interview requests, especially recently with the UAP hearings and the balloon gates and all of that. But I'm looking forward to having this discussion because it's coming at it from a different angle. So I'm really looking forward to discussing the medical aspect or physiological issues that might come from having close exposure to UAP.
Okay, well, that is my next question. What are some physical effects that you have experienced after having an encounter with a UAP?
So I can't pinpoint any particular physiological effect that I had in November of 2004. Uh, I was in an aircraft. I was at a pretty high altitude and distance from the UAP itself. I was the wingman to Commander David Fravor, who got closer and had, I would say a more direct exposure. But I didn't feel anything at the time. I had a roller coaster of emotions and excitement and adrenaline, but I didn't have, a headache or ears ringing or um, anything else that was sort of telling me that something had gone, uh, sort of been exposed to something. And then since that, because I was a junior officer and that was the beginning of my career, I have spent a lot of time in pretty hazardous conditions on flight decks and in aircraft and near radar, um, extreme temperatures. I spent a year boots on ground in Afghanistan where we were, dealing with things like burn pits and exposures like that. So, I think there's probably an accumulated effect of all of those things over the course of my life. So last year I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I had a full bilateral mastectomy because it was early stage, and they were able to get it and get around the margins of it with a surgery. Um, and so, that's kind of the only thing that I would say, maybe some radiation or some exposure to something might have caused it. But again, I've had exposure to a lot of things, so uh, I can't blame the UAP.
Did you speak to doctors about the UAP encounter?
I have. I've mentioned it to both my primary care docs, in part because in recent years, as the um, exposure, the media exposure has ticked up, I just wanted to give them a heads up because one of the first things that docs ask you when you come in is, how's it going? What's going on in your life? And so it's an interesting conversation starter. And then also just to give them a heads up of, this is especially in recent years, kind of a stressor. The requests for interviews and the demand on the time and attention. So I've certainly talked to docs about that. I have talked to one doc in particular who was more interested in the potential sort of Havana Syndrome side effects. And there was suggestion of having an MRI or a brain scan to kind of see if there was anything there. And I again, with the breast cancer, mastectomy, and subsequent reconstruction, haven't gotten around to that, but I'm open to it, and certainly would, if it would contribute to a pool of information and
Did
other
you feel
scans. Yeah.
okay? Did you feel like that doctor had a reason to associate Havana syndrome with this, or did they think it was a secondary issue?
Um, I'm not sure. I can't speak for that doc, but there was a discussion about um, you know possible overlap or similarities in the Havana, and I'm talking about the folks who were exposed down in Cuba to the as part of the embassy that had something that was causing these headaches and symptoms of, they thought maybe they were being subjected to high frequencies or microwaves or something like that. Um, so yeah, again, it was just a suggestion of, hey, maybe get this checked out.
Okay.
So
Well,
I do have tinnitus, which is like a ringing in my ears, but that started after an RD round, which is kind of like a grenade, went off inside my vehicle as part of our training, our workup for the deployment boots on ground to Afghanistan. So I do have ringing in my ears, but I've always blamed it on that RD round that went off like a flashbang inside of our vehicle. So
you've been through quite a lot. I
yeah,
have to, I have to admire you for being as smiley as you are. Let's just say happy as it can be. It's a wonderful thing that you have that ability. You've been through a lot. Um, I wanted to talk about, with these doctors, it seems like at least one took it very seriously. But I just wanted to know in general, did you feel like they took these issues seriously, the UAP aspect seriously, or did you feel some stigma or a sense of any kind of recoiling? How did they respond to hearing about the UAP aspect?
um, I've never felt sort of embarrassed or stigmatized or um, condescended to by my doctors, and I think that's in part because I seek out providers who are known to be a safe space in general. So I look for docs that are LGBTQ friendly, that have staff that are warm and actually spend time listening and um, not jumping to conclusions and all of that. So that's important to me in general, to have a good relationship with my providers. And if I don't, I mean, I have like fired docs, even in the military where you're sort of assigned to a doc. I've gone up to the administrator and said, I'm not going to see this doc again. Um, I don't like his bedside manner, and I thought he was dismissive. And I get that they're under all sorts of pressure with their limitations in time, and the bottom line is that, I think I went in and I had 3 or 4 things I wanted to talk to him about, and he said, "What's your priority? Like, you can talk to me about one thing." And I said, "Well, I've got these things," and so anyway, I fired him. So I think that that's part of the responsibility on the patient, is to go out and make sure that you are doing your homework and connecting with providers that will listen and respect you, um, and look to provide care, whether it's uh, reactive to a condition that you already have, or proactive to prevent something, preventative maintenance for the future.
Actually, I really think that's a great idea. Looking for someone who's more open-minded, of course, it's a great idea. And I would hope that some doctors actually post some information about that, sort of background about what they support. Maybe that might be helpful for people to find. So my next question is, I'm going to switch a little to the psychological.
Sure.
Um, when you had the UAP encounter, you said that initially you felt sort of excited, but I wanted to ask what the effects psychologically were.
In the moment that day, or in the days and weeks following,
All of
or
the above, like
sure.
directly
Yeah.
linked to the UAP.
Yeah. So it was exciting in that we were in the middle of a training, uh, a whole workup phase. So this entire carrier-based exercise, had been going on for a while, and we were going to be out there for a while. And so I don't want to suggest that we're sort of bored, but we certainly weren't excited. We were doing our job and doing what we'd been trained to do and had been practicing. So when we launched that day, I think if we'd all been wearing heart rate monitors, you would have just seen just normal flat curves there. But then when the controller said, "Hey, we need you to go check out this real world contact," you probably would have seen a spike, because then we said, "Oh, this is real world. This isn't just practice and training. This is something that has," especially in a post 9/11 era. I mean, this is 2004. We're 3 years after 9/11. It's still really raw. So there was a spike in adrenaline there, and we all perked up. But then, and I think I've described this before, when I saw the disturbance in the water, my first thought was that whatever we were trying to intercept had crashed and was, sinking in this water. And so my heart sank, and I thought, oh, here we are now. We're on scene commanders for a search and rescue effort, which has its own kind of adrenaline and sense of urgency to it. And, hence you can see the roller coaster of excitement to, sort of, oh no, there's potentially a life down there that's sinking, to what's that, when we saw the Tic Tac come in, and sort of confusion and all of that. So in the moment, certainly, again, all these emotions and excitement and adrenaline. But then when we came back to the ship and debriefed, I wasn't disturbed in a way that was affecting, I went and had lunch. I sort of went about the rest of my day and my routine in a way that was normal. I slept that night. I didn't lose any sleep over the issue. So, and then in the years following, it hasn't haunted me in a way that I would say has required any sort of psychological therapy or anything like that. I would say that the aftermath of going on 60 Minutes and talking about it, and then being bombarded with all of the folks who wanted to talk to me after that for interviews, and just the folks on the internet, that was a little bit overwhelming, and I had to set some boundaries and not get sucked into the having fights with strangers on Twitter kind of thing. But yeah, no real psychological distress, I would say, either during, immediately after, or subsequently.
And I just want to point out one thing I really admire is that you have found humor at times related to the topic, and have shown things that you find in your journeys that are really interesting, like the UFO beer cans. I can't get over that.
Yeah, well, now I see it everywhere, and so we have this, and I think this gets to the nature of pilots and military. Part of our selection initially is a psychological screening. So we take this ASTB test, Aviation Selection and Testing Battery, and it has kind of like an SAT. There's math problems, and I think there's some spatial orientation questions, and then there's a whole section that's not quite a Myers-Briggs or Ocean 5 factor, but it's a test of personality. And they're looking for folks who are conscientious, right? Who are going to follow a checklist, who are going to follow the rules and regulations. But then they're also looking for a sort of mid-range of neuroticism. And so when we say folks are neurotic, that gets a bad rap because that has sort of a negative connotation, but it's a scale. And so you don't want people that are a 0 on neuroticism, because then they just won't give a damn, and they could be reckless, or somebody's shooting at them. you want the hair on the back of their neck to stand up. On the other hand, you don't want somebody who's 100 in neuroticism, because then any little thing, they're going to be freaking out. So, my colleagues and I are all different, but one thing that you'll note is that, especially in the strike fighter squadrons, the people tend to be sort of even keeled, able to take a stressful situation and continue to perform, and a part of the resilience. So, we talk about people being resilient, but resilience actually comes after a trauma or a difficult time. Grit is the motivation that gets you there. Hardiness is what gets you through it. But resilience is how if you bounce back. And so a lot of that has to do with the work hard, play hard philosophy that a lot of squadrons, and especially strike fighter squadrons, have. So, you're out there, you're sober, and you're on mission, and you're on target, on time. And then when you have some downtime, you have a good sense of humor, and know how to play, and know how to party. So that's
Yeah, that's
something
good.
that I appreciate.
I actually teach that to kids about how to bounce back. I use the basketball as a metaphor, and I let them
Yes,
know that if it's a flat ball because it hasn't got the resilience, then it's not going to help you win the game. It's
exactly.
like, a,
No, and it's something that we should be talking about more, and talking about with the younger generations, because we put so much pressure on them and expect them not to break. But if we're not giving them the tools that they need in order to withstand the force when it's on their shoulders, and a lot of that has to do with not just shouldering that burden as an individual, but relying on a network of support. So letting them know, who in your family, who in your friends, your teachers, your coaches, your doctors, can you reach out to and share a little bit of this load with. But also when the load is off, it's spring break, or it's summer vacation, or it's just at night when you need to go to bed and reset, being able to take that load off, shake those shoulders out, and get ready to put it back on when you need to. So yeah, I think that's a really important message that we don't talk about enough.
so my next question is, you mentioned support. So I guess this sort of ties into this. How has it been in a psychosocial sense? Has there been a social impact for you having had the UAP encounter, or because of the media related to the UAP encounter? Because that seems to have been a bigger stressor.
Yeah, so we didn't, because so many people in our squadron encountered it in November 2004, and our commanding officer encountered it. It wasn't, you're crazy. It wasn't, shut up. It was, that was weird. And then again, we debriefed, and we kind of went on with our lives. So I was never, the UFO girl, because I don't know, we didn't start calling it UAP until recently. But it was never really a topic of conversation over beers. It never came up. And then in modern days, post the 60 Minutes piece, and in the last couple of years, friends and family, it's sort of a novelty. It's sort of a fun, sort of bizarre, absurd thing that I'm involved with. Like I just tonight, we made dinner for the kids and cleaning up the dishes, and I said, I have to go find a quiet spot and do this interview. And my husband says, oh, okay, another UAP thing. But I'm not sort of ostracized from family or friends. I work with a lot of scientists and engineers, and they're actually really curious, just from a technical perspective. Yeah, I would say it hasn't been a negative for me personally or professionally.
That's wonderful. I have to say that my family also treats it like a novelty, and they give me really interesting gifts as a result. So they've been adding everything from bobbleheads to magnets. It's just a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to ask, because you didn't mention it, that you seem to be drawn to art, related to the topic, and you're part of what was formerly UFO Twitter or Art Club, and now it looks like it's UFO X, I guess, Art Club.
Oh, have we renamed it? I don't know.
Yes, it's no longer called Twitter. It's called
No, but
X.
are we still using Twitter and the hashtag, or is it?
I don't know. Some people are still using Twitter. I think it's confusing. But yeah, I saw that you were very interested in the arts, so I thought
Yeah.
maybe you could speak to how that might be beneficial.
Yeah. Oh, I have always been a lover of the arts. I wish I could say a patron of the arts. But my aunt growing up, she's a professional artist and won awards and, was in these great galleries. And, and so in my family, art was always revered and respected. I grew up in Chicago, and my grandmother used to take me to the Art Institute of Chicago there, which is just this, uh, you know, this collection of O'Keeffe's and Renoirs and Monets. That's just all of these great artists throughout history. And um, when I went to school in DC, then for my undergraduate degree, we have the National Gallery and we have um, the modern wing there that I could just spend hours wandering through. And I sometimes refer to it as like taking a bath in the art. People talk about forest bathing, which I do love to be in nature. But if I can go and sort of walk through and let the art wash over me, I walk out, even if I've been walking for 3 or 4 hours through a gallery without a break, I come out feeling just rejuvenated. Um, and even if it's all pieces that I've seen before. So, yeah, art has always been a big part um, of kind of what I crave. And when I travel, I seek out galleries and sculptures and things like that. So um, I really, that resonates with me, especially the visual arts piece of the UFO culture.
Wonderful. I'm so happy that you've had so many positive experiences for the most part, other than the stress, like, from the UFO community. Like, I know about that. So I just wanted to ask, what would you say to providers who are dealing with experiencers, or people who are finally admitting that they're experiencers? Um, and you didn't really have to deal with the therapeutic aspect, but let's say a medical doctor, what would you say to them to make that experience better when they're giving their services to that person?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had doctors in my family as well, and to remember your oath, to do no harm and to care for people, and that means listening to their symptoms. And even though you might be, um, you know, might not quite understand when they say this is from an experience, a strange experience, it doesn't. You don't have to believe it, but what you have to do is listen to their symptoms and help them find relief. I read an article, and I'm forgetting his name now, but it was a neurologist who, and maybe you know more about this, uh, but he had somebody come to him and say, I'm having these symptoms, whatever you go to a neurologist for. I don't know if it was headaches or something, and uh, the neurologist, was taking the notes and said, okay, well, when did these symptoms start? And the person said, well, when I got abducted. And rather than saying, that's absurd, or shaming them or ridiculing them or anything, the doc just said, okay, well, when was that? Give me a date or a timeline. And did a brain scan. I guess it was an MRI, and this person went back to, I don't know if it was an online community or a community somewhere where they had found other folks who had this sensation of having been abducted, and said, I found this neurologist who not only listened to me, but gave me some relief for the symptoms that I've, had as a result of this experience that I've had. And so this neurologist became this, sort of attracted these people. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? The
Yes, I
case?
think I've seen that paper. I think
Okay.
he may be in the UK. I could be wrong, but I think he may
So
not be in the United States.
he's not in the continental United States. I thought maybe Hawaii, but wherever he was, um, he ended up getting these scans of multiple people who all believed that they had been abducted. And so he published the paper and he said, look, I don't know whether these people have been abducted, but what I do know is that their brain scans have similar abnormalities. So whether it's something that they were born with that makes them feel like they've been abducted and have that sensation, or whether they've actually been abducted and then there's this sort of brain damage that's resulted, there's something here. There's some sort of tangible evidence that we can collect systematically and study in a way. And what should be priority over all of that is giving these people relief for their headaches or their dizziness or whatever it is that they were suffering from, rather than judging them or ostracizing them or denying them care because we think they're crazy. And I just thought, wow, that's a doctor who gets it. That's a doc who says, I don't care how that hamster got up your butt. I'm going to help you take it out, right? I'm not going to judge you for the circumstance that you're in, but I'm going to help you find some relief for the pain or the trouble that you're in. So
Yes, I remember that myth of the hamster. I heard that one as well when I was younger. Okay, so I wanted to switch gears just slightly, just because what you have done with what you had experienced, besides, you know, stayed positive and connected to art, is you almost made it a mission to talk about safety for others. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about how you're working to make sure other pilots are safe.
yeah, so one of the reasons that I agreed to speak publicly, and I don't like to say that I've came out or that I certainly don't consider myself to be a whistleblower, but when 60 Minutes called in 2021, one of the reasons I agreed to do that big platform and talk about it was to reduce the stigma so that other people who have encounters feel comfortable reporting it, and then also to advocate for a more robust reporting system. So just because you see something and feel confident saying something doesn't mean that you actually know who to call or where to put that information. And so, there's sort of two tracks there. One is getting people to feel comfortable reporting, and then the other is to have a system where they can report. And last fall, when I was attending the NASA's independent study session in DC, you had folks from NASA, the academics and the scientists. You had the DoD representatives, and you had among them was Sean Kirkpatrick, and then you had the FAA folks, and they were going round and round in circles about the big philosophical questions. Do UAPs exist? And I said, well, if it's unidentified and it's flying around, then by definition they exist, because UAP has been used as a shorthand for some sort of NHI, non-human intelligence flying saucer kind of thing. But if we're being just absolutely systematic here, unidentified, or UAP is just an unidentified object. And so, as we saw with the several weeks of balloon activity earlier this year, there are things that we can identify that we need to sort of zoom in and recalibrate and get up close to in order to to categorize. Um, but then, they were talking about, well, whose responsibility is it, and who's going to pay for it, and all of this. And I kept having to say, well, this is it's a matter of national security, yes, but it's really a matter of safety, because if you're out there flying, from Chicago to Denver, and you strap into your commercial airliner, you don't want something zipping around that air traffic control doesn't have communications with, and it doesn't have a transponder, and the pilot up front, is saying, "What's that? Where's it going? And how do I avoid it?" So it's a no-brainer to me that safety of flight would be the first issue, um, and then we can have all those other conversations about national security and science with a capital S.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. I think they need to really be focusing on safety for both commercial and military pilots, 100%. I think we need to also be talking about some preventative things. So if people are experiencing possibly Havana-like symptoms or a possible radiation experience, maybe they can do something to give them some warning, that that could be happening. Maybe some little Geiger counter that's $50 on Amazon, for instance. Yes, I looked up how much it was because I went to Roswell and I was like, maybe I'll bring it.
Yeah.
I I chickened out though because I didn't want to get in trouble at the airport for having a strange electronic device. But yeah, I think there's lots of things that we can do for safety. I did catch that the FAA admitted that they had been keeping about 3 reports a month, but it was interesting that it wasn't the ones from the pilots.
Mm.
It was from the controllers.
Yes.
I thought that was awfully sneaky. So thank you for the work that you're doing with that. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for coming and talking today. You're a brave soul. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Please let people know where they can find you.
So I am on the board of advisors for the Americans for Safe Aerospace, and this is a nonprofit that is advocating for these issues of giving pilots a voice, and having that reporting channel uh, established and maintained in a systematic way. And I personally am on Twitter, so I'm Dietrich VFA41. I guess that's X. And yeah, just part of that hashtag UFO Twitter space. I have to update my hashtags, and then you can see me out and about uh, anytime there's a good art show.
Okay, well, thank you again so much. And thank you to everyone who listened. Take care.